and welcome to the show, Brooke Underwood. I am so happy to have you here.
So delighted to be here.
Thank you for rearranging your schedule to be here on such this pivotal time in eclipse season. And we are definitely going to be talking about that for sure. So there's just so much that's up right now, cosmically, energetically, collectively. So tell us a little bit about you and how you got to be where you are.
Mm, indeed, this is the mystery. I love this question. I am a Jyotish astrologer these days after many moons of following what I like to call my muse in my internal guidance and also my observation of patterns and people and places that really stimulated more of who I am. And even when we met, Taylor, 7 years ago, I believe,
Mhm.
this was also part of my awareness of what is my path, my dharma, and how to synthesize all the information that I was receiving on what could be my path, my highest service to humanity. And eventually, I allowed it to penetrate me in all different ways. The eclipse cycles and noticing the transits that were affecting me and my consciousness, my birth chart particularly. It was one of the only things that stayed after many years of experimentation and studying different esoteric, yogic, and divine feminine mystery school paths. And it's been my guiding blueprint and my guiding system to not only help myself, but also help others, and particularly women, step into their power and simultaneously embrace whatever sacred mess and whatever huge cauldron of
Hmm.
transformation they are in and out of, as we all are at different points of our lives. And particularly with the eclipses, it can feel extra, extra hot in the pot.
It does feel hot in the pot. So, to the listener that doesn't know maybe much about astrology or maybe the very basic Jyotish, right? Did I say that
Yes,
correctly?
yep.
Okay. Okay,
Jyotish
so
astrology. Mhm.
and how is that, where is that lineage from, and how is that different than most of the other astrology that I believe that we're seeing now? And is there much of a difference between the two?
Yes, there is much of a difference. I was very blessed to study Western astrology, tropical Western astrology, for years and really sink my teeth in there, and also pivot in Western astrology to traditional Hellenistic Greco Roman type of astrology that's had a huge renaissance. Um, and after some experimentation and tracking my own life cycles and those of my friends and my lovers and my family members and so forth, I kept on wanting to go deeper, deeper into my questions of why this? Why do I feel like I have an appetizer of my knowledge of astrology, but I'm just so hungry for something more satisfying and essentially something that was grounded in a spiritual lineage, as I was also a practicing yogi, and Western astrology and my yogic practices for me, they weren't synchronized. So I pivoted into
Mm-hmm.
Vedic astrology after um, receiving two Vedic astrological readings that were pretty life affirming and directive in how best to take advantage of this precious time that we each have in our lives. And both of the astrologers, it's kind of tradition in the Indian and Hindu lineage of advice and counsel is to encourage your student not to pursue what they want to pursue, to see if they're really up for the task and up for the commitment. So I was invited not to pursue Vedic or Jyotish astrology and to kind of wait it out and look at other things in which I could help people with counseling and therapeutic support. But I said, no, this has helped me tremendously. It fascinates me. It puts so many things together. It combines my spiritual path and my physical path in this most exquisite and grounding way. I am going for it. So Jyotish is a part of the Indian system of medicine, and Ayurvedic, another branch of that as well. And so it's a really holistic framework to understand yourself, to understand the nature of reality, and to understand how to use time in a very, very wise way.
Yeah. I remember when I was first introduced to Vedic astrology and all my signs were different. And I was so resistant to that. Like all of a sudden, I mean, I was just like a blanket Scorpio, what I knew. And then it was like, oh, but your sun's in Libra and you have a rising Libra. You actually have 5 planets in Libra. You're very Libra. I was like, no, I'm not. And I was always dating all these Libras and they frustrated me so much. It was like I don't even really like Libras that much. I'm like, now I am one, of course, like we are what we resist.
Mm.
Um, but that was like a big that was like hard to grapple with of like understanding for so long that I was put in this one box, I guess, or my own understanding of self, and then to
Mhm.
learn this whole other way. And yeah, that was like in its own. Did you encounter something similar for yourself? But it was still like very life affirming to shift.
Yes, I think it was a big shift. My moon sign, the moon sign being really, really important to the Jyotishis and the Vedic astrologers, way more than the sun sign. And my moon sign being in Sagittarius instead of 0 degrees Capricorn was, oh, okay, I understand why I'm so in pursuit of the truth, in pursuit of going to the depths of healing technologies to liberate and free myself and others from the bondages and conditionings we're all working through, and which is essentially karma.
Mm-hmm.
And so it did challenge me to perceive myself differently, and also give me a new platform to direct my life. So yeah, I definitely experienced that. Maybe the more resistance I felt was just the part of my ascendant sign being Aquarius instead of Pisces, and that being a little challenging
Hmm.
to to self uh, regulate that information, I guess you could say. But the thing that I found to be really, really resonant with my own path, and anyone who listens to this or who already has a interest in astrology, my biggest advice is to follow the angle that resonates with you, because that's
Hmm.
going to be your muse
Right.
within the scope of astrology. And my muse is the Vedic nakshatras, the 27 zodiacal signs um, that give such a deep um, take on the psycho spiritual dynamics and the manifestations that happen in our life, more so than the 12 zodiacal signs.
Mm-hmm.
So that is my place of home and belonging, and deep research and study, and humbleness to the gods, as we say in this
Mm-hmm.
tradition, because
Have
of the
you had a chance
profoundity.
to have you gone to India and visited those temples that are in rep like for the planets?
Not time yet.
No,
Not
not time
time
yet.
yet.
Yeah. Oh, I can see you there. In holy reverence. Yeah. Well,
Um,
thank you so much for sharing like the lineage and the background of the difference. And that's why I always also choose Vedic as a way to navigate my own natal chart and my own understanding of self because it's so steeped in like such a longer tradition and it's been around so much longer than the Western way. I mean, just like anything done westernized is newer than what's been around before. So thank you for breaking that down for us.
mhm.
Yeah. So with the eclipse season coming up, or we're in it, we're actually in it right now, and we'll still be in it by the time that this episode comes out, which is great. I would love to hear your input of what is happening And we had an eclipse season back in, was it April or May?
Yes.
Okay. And so it was like reversed, right? With solar in Taurus and lunar in Scorpio. Lunar eclipse in Scorpio, solar
Um,
eclipse in Taurus.
Let me double look.
That was like all the Western tropical stuff. I mean, it's hard finding the Vedic on like Instagram, and for me personally, like social media is like definitely more tropic Western stuff.
Yes, and the practical distinguishing factor between the tropical Western and the sidereal Vedic is 24, about 24 degrees of the zodiac. Um, so, yes, when the eclipses happened, they were in Aries Libra in the sidereal tradition in May, April, and they still are in Aries Libra with this cycle of eclipses, but also the same. We're tropical. So yes, they were in Taurus and Scorpio and Taurus this season too, this whole year.
Okay, so it's matching whether you're looking at it from the Western tropic or the Vedic. Okay, good to know. So, what is happening collectively like right now? What are we experiencing besides a lot?
Well, yes, a lot. Life-changing events. This is what the eclipses bring. And often the long-term changes in our lives are governed by the eclipses. And we essentially step into another portal, another aspect, another dimension, another chapter of our lives through the eclipse cycles. And I like to track the eclipse cycles even 1 month before the first eclipse happens. They almost always come in pairs, and usually it's the solar eclipse first and the lunar eclipse for 2 weeks. That happens. And then after the final eclipses happen 1 month after that. So 1 month cushion before, 1 month cushion afterwards is the general framework of when things really transform our lives and where we are able to see repeating cycles, repeating patterns and relationships and any aspect in our life or people from the past as well coming back into the forefront, either in our consciousness, in our dreams, or in physical manifestation. And so it's an internal journey often, but there's a lot of external triggers that get kind of popped off during the eclipse cycle.
Hmm. And what are some of those external triggers that we are experiencing? Like if we know, I know like with Mercury retrograde, it's like, oh, technology isn't really working. There's kind of like these blanket things that we, don't sign contracts. And are there things like that with an eclipse season two that is just kind of collective that we're experiencing?
On the practical note, it is recommended not to start any practices from the Eastern Vedic astrological viewpoint. Starting spiritual practices, starting emotional healing practices. A dear friend of mine started a somatic journaling practice during the eclipse cycle. These things are really great to do because the eclipses naturally turn us inward. And outer projects like starting a new business, starting a new job, anything like that's really new. If you've already been efforting and putting in job applications for weeks and months already, go for it. But the general rule is to note that the internal life is going to be stimulated way more. So any external pursuits can be temporarily um, manifested
Hmm.
and also may not be the resonance in which you are going because there's so much change. And so if you do start something new, if you, for instance, move around an eclipse, just knowing that the medicine of non attachment will help in case what long term plan you have that you made during the eclipses doesn't pan out as you wish because it's such a place of rapid change and moving through what you want and what is your dharma, what is your purpose, what is in your highest alignment.
When you said the solar eclipse, you feel the effects like a month prior and then a
Mm-hmm.
month afterwards. So it's more of like this long, drawn out feels kind of like a slower change or transitions that are happening. And then what about the lunar eclipse? Is that one a little bit more like a quickening, like you see things happening more quick?
Typically, that's how it goes. However, it can be anything for any person. Um, and things like you said, Mercury retrograde, right? We usually see delays in communication, travel snafus, things like this. With eclipses, it can be anything. And noticing what planets are being activated with the eclipses besides the sun and the moon can also give you a flavor of what has been happening. So I'll just share briefly that this first solar eclipse, which a solar eclipse is when the sun and the moon are joined together. It's always during a new moon. And it's when the sun is getting eclipsed by the moon passing in front of the sun. So the moon is taking center stage instead of the sun. And what that means on an energetic level is that our inner world, our lunar, our emotional side, is taking precedence over our ego, over our will, over our pursuits. And that's why it said it's better to pursue emotional, spiritual, connective ways of being more so than, you know, going after some a marathon of sorts or any big thing you want to be achieving. That doesn't mean that things naturally happen during that times, because it can naturally happen during that time. It's just those who are interested in aligning themselves with nature and in their dharmic path. These are just principles to take note. And so the solar eclipse is finishing away often of being or doing and kind of starting to get the taste of something new that's coming. Usually we don't know what that is. And that's why it can be so frustrating that, oh my gosh, this thing is moving in this direction, this thing is ending, but I don't know what will come of it. I don't know if I can handle the uncomfortability, the insecurity, the unknowing, the
Mm-hmm.
my plans going out the window. Do you make serious plans, or do you stay in a place of receptivity? This is something to contemplate during these eclipses, how to trust that. And with this solar eclipse, it was happening in the um, sidereal sign of Swati, it's called, the lunar mansion of Swati, which represents quick movement and the element of wind and things really moving fast. And also, it was with the planet of Venus. And so, Venus brings out relationships, questions about your current relationship status, questions about what you are devoted to in this lifetime, what your values are, what you want in this life. So, a lot of people have been moving through relationship transformations during this time and reevaluating what it is that they define as their standard in love and their standards in life. So that was the first color of the solar eclipse.
Mm. Yeah, the relationship stuff. It's- yeah, it's like something that I've been reading a lot for a lot of people that is up for sure.
Yes,
Um,
yes,
and you touched on briefly even for yourself personally of yeah of
yes.
what's going on.
My own personal relationship um, started. I started understanding where I was going and what I wanted in my life about a month before the eclipses, and it's been a big transformative, healing, enriching, painful, heart liberating, and heartbreaking process
Mm-hmm.
all at the same time. Um, while it's quickening in pace now with the eclipses, the direction is clearing out, but there's still a lot of unknowing.
Yeah.
And based on my yogic and spiritual practices, which is why it's so I believe just crucial for everyone to have something that they can devote to, that takes them out of their ego self and their own smallness and helps them realize that they are not the doer, that something much more is playing our reality. And by surrendering to that and by being anchored in my spiritual practices, it was the way in which I could get through this heartbreak and this heart opening simultaneously.
Yeah. Mm. Well, I'm feeling you and holding you in this transitional time. Yeah.
Thank you.
Relationships, for sure. I was speaking about this at the last podcast episode of, relationships being the vehicles to God. And just when we're
Yes.
touching on love, and it's just like you mentioned, like the heart, the liberation and the heart breaking, like all of it all at the same time.
Yes.
And it's so deeply transformative, so I'm not surprised when it's like, oh, eclipse season, relationships are up. It's like, yeah, of course, because those are the things that really just, turn us inside out, you know
Yes.
so
Yes. Yes.
completely. So with the solar eclipse bringing all that stuff up, what was coming up then with the lunar eclipse that we just had on the 25th with in Scorpio?
That was the solar eclipse that we just had. We'll be
Oh, that was a
having,
solar eclipse. Oh, okay. Thanks for that clarification. Okay, so when is the lunar eclipse?
the lunar eclipse is coming November 8th in the
November
morning on
8th.
the East Coast time.
Okay.
And with this lunar eclipse, the energy from the Vedic perspective is very much still um, heavy in its transformative element. The nakshatra or the Vedic sidereal placement this moon is going to be in is in this placement called Bhairani, which is the yoni and the womb.
Hmm.
And so when the moon is in Bhairani during this time, things will be taken away from our lives, or we will be okay with letting them go. And Bhairani means a sort of washing away what no longer serves, and also understanding what you can control, your emotional state, how you're responding, how you're regulating your body, how you're using your communication, your speech wisely, and also what you cannot ultimately control. And so, with the symbol as well of the womb or the celestial yoni, Bhairani, there is this element of death, birth, transformation that's still going to be carried through this eclipse cycle. So, there is more elements of relationship as well that's going to be transformed. And a lot of people, clients and friends that I've been speaking with, this uncertainty of their relationship status, whether it's with a lover or whether it's with a child or a child they're wanting to bring into their life, whether it's with how they're going about in business. With Byrony, there will be clarity, particularly, I would say, some sort of shocking information that will give you the clarity of what exactly it is that you need. And some are already receiving the clarity of what they need. However, on a collective level, I would say for the majority of us, that there will be a huge finished shakeup of things, sort of like the last shake of the salad dressing, then putting it on the salad and like, okay, perfect. This is the mix. This is what is going to satisfy my taste and carry me forward and assimilate into my body and into my life. I say this also because the moon will be with Uranus, and the moon in this lunar eclipse, the full moon, the bright, bright moon, is going to be with Uranus, this planet of unexpected change and radical shakeup. So I particularly see on a collective, there's going to be some disclosures coming to the surface, or new information, or people continuously passing as well. You can note during the eclipse cycles, usually famous people pass, or they get positioned into a leadership. This specific eclipse cycle happened, the last time it happened was in 2004. And when that happened, George W. Bush Jr. was elected, and the man who played Superman, Christopher Reeves, died. And so there was some shifting in kind of the hero archetype in the collective, and what is a true a leader, especially from the scope of the masculine. And so that shook up some things, and I expect this whole eclipse cycle to really shake up leadership in a big way. Um, but it can feel really, on an individual and personal level, it can feel really humbling. Of wow, I really didn't see that one. With all my tools all my practices with my self trust. Whoa, I really didn't see that one. So it is an
Hmm.
opportunity to, again, to let go of the ego, to let go of the driver, and to allow yourself to understand what exactly it is that you need in this new cycle of your life, because your needs are always fluctuating. And this is something the eclipses show us. So that's totally okay, that you can become a different and better version of yourself if you're willing to step into that courage that's often needed.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. So that's coming, and you said November 8th, right?
Yes,
November 8th.
yes.
Okay.
And the last thing I'd say about that too, not only with Uranus, the moon being in Byrony, but also Saturn is going to be the other planet that's going to be affecting this eclipse, the lunar eclipse. And so when Saturn is affecting the sun and the moon, it's a difficult aspect. It's kind of a wow, my foundation, my structure, my relationship, it's either okay, I know where I'm going, this is working. It's like you do a stress test and it's, okay, approved or disapproved. Whoa, I really need to have better foundations or better structures. But the way to go about this is also a type of surrender way of, again, I didn't realize that I actually had a table with 3 legs instead of 4. How could I have missed that? It's okay. And so there's this
Hmm.
surrender to wisdom or knowledge that you might not have mastered just yet. Um, so asking yourself how you're going to take care of yourself at this time. What are you devoted to? What are the foundations that need extra support in this next cycle of your life? These are things to contemplate.
Yeah. And with that also being said, with the lunar eclipse coming, what are some really good self-care practices that we could be doing to help nourish ourselves while we're maybe on the edge of our seat waiting for this shocking news that you speak of? Or do you recommend a certain practice that can kind of help amplify or support what is coming through?
Every person absolutely is individuated and deserves to find the practice that's going to work with them. Ultimately, we want to make sure we're clearing karma during the eclipse cycles and not creating more karma.
Hmm.
And that's a fine line.
Mm-hmm.
And the best way I find to do that is through embodiment practices of breath work, of yoga nidra, especially to calm the nerves as we're living in such an excess vata world, excess wind, and excess stimulation of our nervous system, of just going into a deep, deep rest. Yogic rest is what yoga nidra is called, or yogic sleep. I find to be really rejuvenating for myself and many of my clients. And also being in nature, not watching television or the computer or screens late at night, being really clear that the psychic information that you're
Hmm.
taking in may affect you stronger during this time. So if you took a break from social media, or you had a new morning practice where you didn't reach for your phone for the first hour or two of your day, or the last 2 to 4 hours of your evening, things like this can really be grounding um, for us. The other thing is just fasting in general, psychically and energetically. So if there's something like sugar or coffee that is really stimulating for you, it's a good time to take a break from that, or to lower the dosage.
Hmm. Those are all wonderful tips. Yeah, I posted like a little video or whatever on I guess Tuesday when it was in the solar eclipse, and I took a 3 hour nap that day, and it was
Mm,
so nourishing because I just like released all of these shoulds of like, okay,
yes.
this is like the new moon and the solar eclipse, and this is a time to do this and to do that and do that, and the power's really amped up, and the magic is really here, and I just took a nap, and it was so perfect and exactly what I needed, and it just felt like it actually already is happening, like everything's happening, whether I want to say the perfect mantra or do the breath work or not. It's just like still happening. So I like that you mentioned that of like being more grounded, resting, being in your body because that's important.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And still it is recommended that you honor your ancestors in any way
Hmm.
during the eclipse cycles, and especially with Samhain and Halloween and All Saints Day. It is really appropriate to be connecting to your ancestors, whether they're alive or past, or a group of, entities, or a spiritual lineage that feels like home and feels like something beyond the veil has your back.
Hmm. I love that. Yeah. The hands on our back from our ancestors. That's like a common prayer I'm always asking for. I love that. So, yeah, we are in that season. I guess another question I have for you is, are these eclipses impacting anyone more so specific than someone else? So, like, if I'm having my moon is in Scorpio, so, and with it being Scorpio season and with all of this, like, am I more amped up and like than the other person or
Most
something?
likely, yes. So yes, for Western tropical astrology, these have been happening in Scorpio and Taurus. The solar eclipse happened at 2 degrees Scorpio. So the closer you are to the degree, the more of the effect you're going to have. Um, and 2 degrees Scorpio, that's the beginning of Scorpio. So 2 degrees Scorpio, 2 degree Taurus, 2 degree, you know, uh, what is the other thing? I'm having a blank here. Leo and Aquarius as well, the fixed signs.
Okay.
If you have early planets in those signs in their early degrees, then you will often be affected by them.
Mm-hmm.
Looking at your Western chart, the lunar eclipse is happening at 16 degrees Taurus. So a little more middle of the zodiac sign of Taurus, Scorpio, Leo, and Aquarius, the fixed signs. And so noticing the effects of certain planets in that area of your life,
Mm-hmm.
um, the stronger they are, the stronger the effects are, the closer they are to the degrees.
Yeah.
So if there's 10 degrees away from your 2 degree Scorpio position, it's going to be a little different than if it was exact at 2 degrees.
Yeah. Well, thank you for clarifying that for sure. My children are in the background. Sorry for making the sound. It's perfect. We can maybe edit that out later. um, yeah, that's really great information. And you said that you're also a relationship mentor, and I'm assuming do you do relationship natal charts and work primarily with looking at a couple's chart and coming together? Is that something you do?
Absolutely, yes. And most importantly, I laser in on the areas of what's going to be an auspicious match for you in this lifetime in terms of relationship
Mm,
based on planetary positions.
mm-hmm,
So I do a lot of mentoring of following what your heart is really yearning for, what would be compatible for your energy, for your direction in your life, for your family, and and really sinking into that dharmic path of relationships, because it is so connected. How we're feeling good about the path that we're walking is going to bring in a relationship that we enjoy, or it's going to enhance one already existing, or that relationship may be past its expiration date, or it may require some different um, nuances or ways of being in relationship to that person. So many people have extraordinary relationships that aren't traditional, and astrology also allows people to take that untraditional route if
mm,
that is true for them as
okay.
well. So yes, I do relationship readings based on just your personal chart, and also what's called relationship synastry or compatibility.
Yeah.